Army Chief General Naravane leaves for Ladakh to review the situation at the LAC. The Army Commanders Conference in progress to review the operational situation on both the northern and the western fronts. Prime Minister K.S. Fund Trust allocates 2,000 crore rupees for supply of 50,000 made-in-India ventilators to the government-run COVID hospitals in all the states and the Union Territories. Another 1,000 crore rupees from Prime Minister K.S. Fund allocated for the welfare of the migrant labourers. Government structural reforms and supportive social welfare measures along with the RBI's policy measures reinvigorates the economy. Economic indicators show an increase in the economic activity. The Finance Ministry emphasizes on the need for all the stakeholders to work together for Atmanirbhar Bharat. Lord Jagannath's Rath Yatra at Puri in progress with restrictions as per Supreme Court guidelines. Rath Yatra takes place at the Jagannath Temple. Also after Gujarat High Court allows conducting the Rath Yatra with restrictions. President, Vice President, Prime Minister and other leaders extend greetings on the occasion. Defence Minister arrives in Moscow for a 3-day visit to Russia. India looks forward to deepening defence and strategic partnership with Russia as Raksha Mantri to hold bilateral meeting with the Russian counterpart. External Affairs Minister S.J. Shankar to take part in the trilateral virtual meeting with Russia and China today. The meeting will focus on joint efforts to counter crisis in the global policy and the economy caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. The nation remembers the founder of Bharatiya Janasangh, Shama Prasad Mukherjee, on his Balidan Divas. Prime Minister Modi, Union Home Minister Amit Shah and the BJP National President J.P. Nadda paid tribute to the leader. And India's recovery rate from COVID-19 improves to 56.37% with more than 2.48 lakh people cured. The global cases of COVID-19 nears 91 lakh. The death toll in hardest hit US crosses 1.2 lakh. Hello and good afternoon. You're watching Doordarshan News with me, Nancy Kohli. A top story: the Army Chief General Naravane is visiting Ladakh today, and during his 2-day visit, the Army Chief will review the ground situation and discuss the ongoing standoff with the ground commanders. Also visit the forward locations and interact with the troops on the ground. Okay, let's go across live now to the External Affairs Minister S.J. Shankar speaking.
For the Order of the Red Star, the medical mission led by Dr. Kotnis was a legend in China. So tomorrow, when our military contingent marches through the Red Square, it would be an affirmation of the difference that we made. When victors met to fashion the ensuing global order, the political circumstances of that era did not give India due recognition. This historical injustice has stood uncorrected over the last 75 years, even as the world has changed. Therefore, on this momentous occasion, it is important for the world to realize both the contribution that India made and the need to rectify the past. But beyond history, international affairs must also come to terms with contemporary reality. The United Nations began with 50 members. Today it has 193. Surely its decision making cannot continue to be in denial of this fact. We, the RIC countries, have been active participants in shaping the global agenda. It is India's hope that we will also now converge on the value of reformed multilateralism. Excellencies, this special meeting reiterates our belief in the time-tested principles of international relations. But the challenge today is not just one of concepts and norms, but equally of their practice. The leading voices of the world must be exemplars in every way, respecting international law, recognizing the legitimate interests of partners, supporting multilateralism, and promoting common good are the only way to build a durable world order. I thank Russia for convening this meeting, and I look forward to our further discussions.
That is, of course, the RIC, the Russia-India-China trilateral meeting taking place, of course, where India is taking part. And, of course, the External Affairs Minister, S. Shankar, was speaking as far as at the trilateral meeting is concerned. And, in fact, that meeting taking place through the video conferencing with his Chinese and Russian counterpart. We'll be getting more inputs on that RIC trilateral meeting that is taking place. But let's go back now to our top focus as far as the Army Chief's visit to Ladakh is concerned today. And in fact, meanwhile, according to the top sources, the core commander level talks between India and China were held at Moldo in a cordial, positive and constructive atmosphere. There was also a mutual consensus to disengage. The modalities for disengagement from all the friction areas in eastern Ladakh were discussed and will be taken forward by both the sides. Okay, let's now go across to our correspondent Nandita Dagar, who is joining us with more inputs on that. Nandita, important developments, of course, taking place as far as those talks are concerned. We're given to understand that those were held in a cordial atmosphere, and of course, there's unanimity between both the sides to disengage and de-escalate, and of course, reach a positive solution as far as India-China standoff is concerned. But important also, Nandita, is the Army Chief's visit to Ladakh today.
Good afternoon, Nancy. Army Chief General Narwane's visit to Ladakh and to Leh, which is the headquarters of the 14 Corps, comes on a day when he has wrapped up the Army Commanders Conference in Delhi. And of course, last night's talk, about 1 hour back, we were just told by our sources, and which we have broadcast through DD News to our viewers, that the core commander level talks, which were held yesterday, and they lasted, Nancy, almost 11 to 12 hours, because they began at 11:30 in the morning and they went up till 11:30 in the night, which is clearly out of ordinary. And they were core commander level talks, which means Lieutenant General Harinder Singh, who is the commander of the 14 Corps in charge of the LAC in eastern Ladakh, which is occupied by China, and his Chinese counterpart, the PLA Army General, who's in charge of the Chinese, in charge of the Tibet military district. They had held talks, and Nancy, yes, there was a consensus that was reached. Because in the talks earlier on, the Indian Army delegation had told the Chinese in no unclear terms, in very, very unambiguous terms, unequivocally, they were told that if they do not go back to the positions prior to 5th of May, the situation will escalate and India is ready for any eventuality as it maneuvers in the Indian Ocean, states of Malacca and its airspace with its fighter jets are clearly showing an intention, and the Prime Minister's words were also given, making us understand that India will not buckle under pressure. Also, Nancy, what I wanted to tell you, something very important is that through these talks, I want to tell our viewers through you, Nancy, that these talks should not be construed as a de-escalation of tension or a diffusion of the crisis, because, Nancy, we know that we cannot take the Chinese at face value. We had on 6th of June Corps Commander level talks. These were, of course, the second Corps Commander talks, but on 15th of June, just a night after the battalion commander was talking to their battalion commander, the PLA Army battalion commander, the Chinese, through trickery and deception, laid an ambush, and where 20 of our soldiers gave it back to them. Of course, they gave them a bloody nose. 20 of our soldiers were martyred, but we, as we have been telling on DD News for the past 1 week, we killed almost 45 of their, around 45 of their troops. But it was trickery, deception. They did not, whatever was agreed to in the meeting the day prior to that was not agreed to. So this disengagement, which they has been agreed to, will clearly be verified on the ground and by our commanders on the ground, and will be surely be wary of their trickery, deception, and deceit, because of this, and accordingly we have changed our rules of engagement and standard operating procedures, which were arrived at upon the 1993, 1996 and 2005 agreement, etc. We will not, the army has been given a free hand, it can use weapons. So there, we do not know the details of the change in the standard operating procedures, but now the army cannot take the Chinese at the face value, nor can the nation, and therefore every step of the Chinese in de-escalation, which means going back from the LAC in the huge numbers that they had built up, that will have to be verified upon the ground, and it will this disengagement will take place by and by, and that is when we could say that the situation will be diffused. Yes, General Narwane is there. He will be having a debrief from his commanders on the ground, the people who were part of the delegation, and of course raising the morale of his forces, which have certainly given China a bloody nose again on 15th of June this year, and of course are holding their own eye to eye and full of josh and high spirit. Nancy?
Okay. All right, Nandita, thanks very much for joining us for the moment and sharing all those inputs and of course putting the developments into perspective for us. Let's also now go across to Amritpal Singh, who is there in of course on the ground situation. Amrit, what are you learning as far as these co-commander level talks are concerned since you are there? Of course, what we are picking up is that they were held in a cordial atmosphere and there was a mutual consensus between India and China to disengage.
That's right, Nancy. That's what we're hearing as well here on the ground, that Corps Commander level talks happened in a very cordial atmosphere in Moldova today, and the very fact that they lasted for close to about 11 hours so it speaks about that things were discussed in detail. Otherwise, if the talks had broken down, the Indian Corps Commander would have come back from Moldova, which lies on the Chinese side earlier. But I think what was discussed in detail was that the disengagement process, which was earlier decided on the 6th of June, must be carried forward. But India would have forcefully put its point across that and sought assurances from the Chinese that incidents like the one that happened on the 14th and 15th night should never repeat itself. Indian military commander would have also very, very clearly conveyed it to his Chinese counterpart that if such eventuality takes place, the Indian forces reserve the right to respond, and they would take tough measures, because it has been decided at the highest political level that the forces be given a free hand to deal with the situation. Local commanders may open fire if so required, if the situation so warrants, for the safety of the troops and also for guarding the territorial integrity of the country. So General Harvinder Singh would have conveyed this to General Liu Lin very, very clearly, that the Indian forces will not care for any past agreements. If there is a violation by the Chinese side, the Indians will go ahead with the new rules of engagement. Also, the need for, apart from the assurances that such incidents do not happen, but the need for a rapid and express and urgent disengagement along all points of standoff. So what we are hearing is that the Chinese have in principle agreed to that. It remains to be seen that how quickly that happens and that standoff is resolved, which is well into its 7th week today. Nancy?
Absolutely. Talks translating into action. They're important, of course, those talks taking place there, but also important development taking place today, Amrit, is of course the Army Chief's visit there, and an important agenda on his visit, Amrit, because he'll be discussing the ongoing standoff with the ground commanders, visiting the forward locations and also interacting with the troops on the ground. What more can you share with us?
What we know is that he will be visiting the bases and reviewing the operational preparedness. He's expected to arrive here in Leh any time now. The Army Chief will review the situation, the preparedness of the forces along the line of actual control and our forward bases. Of course, he will be interacting with the ground commanders, and that gives them their morale a big boost, because after the decision was taken that the local commanders can take decisions on their own if situation so warrants, and don't need to constantly keep looking, watching their backs and getting back to the base for taking decisions. So the general, when he would be conveying this to the field commanders, it of course boosts the morale, but also the operational preparedness. We know that a number of troops have been moved right up to the forward locations to fortify our defenses, both by the Indian Army and also the Indian Air Force. The Indian Air Chief was here last week to review the preparedness of the Air Force. Now the Army Chief is taking this visit. I also hear that he shall be visiting the Kashmir Valley tomorrow. That remains to be confirmed though, but today, yes, he's visiting Ladakh and taking a review.
All right, Amritpal Singh, thanks very much for joining us for the moment and sharing all those inputs and developments. Thanks very much. And moving on now, in its fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, the Union government is supplying 50,000 made-in-India ventilators to the government-run COVID hospitals in all the states and the Union territories. The government has already allocated 2,000 crore rupees for the supply of these ventilators under the Prime Minister Cares Fund. So far, 2,923 ventilators have been manufactured, out of which 1,340 ventilators have already been delivered to the states and the Union territories. And by the end of this month, additional 14,000 ventilators will be delivered to all the states. The prominent recipients include Maharashtra and Delhi for 275 ventilators each, Gujarat for 175, Bihar for 100, Karnataka for 90 and Rajasthan for 75. Further, a sum of 1,000 crore rupees has also been allocated for the welfare of the migrant laborers. And let's now go across to our correspondent Arun Sharma, who is joining us with more inputs on that. Arun, so clearly we're of course seeing the fund that had been, that was in fact accumulated under the Prime Minister Cares Fund, that is being put to use, that is in fact being used for fighting this pandemic in a better way, equipping the states and the Union territories with more medical equipment.
That's right, Nancy, and it is indeed the need of the hour as well to create a better health infrastructure and health ecosystem as far as a fight against COVID is concerned. If we look at this way, Nancy, that in last 70 years, India had the capacity of close to 40,000 ventilators only when it comes to contributing health infrastructure. And most of these ventilators were imported from various other countries. That means there was no Make in India component when it comes to creating the ventilators or the health infrastructure. So now when the PM Cares Fund allocated 2,000 crore rupees dedicated for manufacturing the Make in India fund, various companies like this fact that Bharat Electronics, the PSU company, will be manufacturing 30,000 ventilators, followed by Agwa. Now Agwa is in partnership with Maruti Suzuki, is manufacturing 10,000 ventilators, and AMTZ Basic and AMTZ High End. These will be also producing manufacturing the ventilators. The best part of these ventilators, Nancy, and that is something which is noteworthy, and our viewers should also know that these ventilators are very much compact in nature, which as of now, which are being manufactured. Artificial intelligence is being loaded. It is having all advanced technologies that is required in the ventilator. Of course, it is energy efficient ventilators that India is producing as of now. So now the capacity, no doubt, is very much less, because our target is of manufacturing 50,000 ventilators. But as the production capacity is increased by these companies like Bharat Electronics, Agwa, we will soon be in a position, by the next year, we'll be in a position to also export this ventilator. So we are now trying to expand our capacities, expand our healthcare infrastructure capacities, so that we can also export. So as Prime Minister Narendra Modi has clearly said that we should also be vocal for local products, and of course we should make for a world as well and produce and manufacture in India. So in that context, it is very much important as far as this 2,000 crore rupees of fund, which is dedicated for ventilators and all the COVID dedicated hospitals.
Sure. Okay. All right, thanks, Arun. We seem to be having a bit of a problem there with your link, but we'll, of course, try and get back to you for more inputs. But thanks very much for joining us and sharing all those insights into these developments. And moving on now, the government e-marketplace has made it mandatory for sellers to enter the country of origin while registering all new products on GEM. Sellers who had already uploaded their products before the introduction of this new feature on the government e-marketplace are being reminded regularly to update the country of origin, failing which their products shall be removed from the marketplace. The e-marketplace has taken this significant step to promote Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat. The government e-marketplace has also enabled a provision for the indication of the percentage of the local content in the products. Now, with this new feature, now the country of origin, in fact, as well as the local content percentage are visible in the marketplace for all the items. And more importantly, the Make in India filter has also been enabled on the portal. Buyers can now choose to buy only those products that meet the minimum 50% local content criteria. Moving on now, the world-famous Lord Jagannath's Rath Yatra began this morning in Puri amid restrictions, and the siblings Lord Jagannath, Balbhadra and Goddess Subhadra boarded the chariots at the Singadwara facing towards the Gundicha temple. The chariots of the Lords Jagannath and Balbhadra and Goddess Subhadra will be pulled only by the selective servitors and police officials. The Odisha government has appealed to citizens to refrain from stepping out of their homes when the chariots roll out on the Grand Road in view of the COVID-19 pandemic. The government has imposed curfew-like shutdown across the district from 9 at night of Monday till 2 in the afternoon of Wednesday. President Ramnath Kovind, Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu and Prime Minister Modi have greeted the nation on the occasion of Rath Yatra and hoped that the occasion bring good health, happiness and prosperity in the lives of the people. Lord Jagannath's Rath Yatra also began at Jagannath Temple in Ahmedabad with restrictions, and in a late night order, the Gujarat High Court had allowed the annual Rath Yatra as proposed by the state government and temple authorities. Limited devotees are allowed to pull the chariot, and as per the High Court's order, there will be a total Janta curfew across the city during the Rath Yatra. Now, guided by the urgent need to save lives, Jaan hai to jahan hai, the government resorted nationwide lockdown to contain the spread of COVID-19. The strict lockdown and social distancing measures, however, adversely, in fact, did affect the economy for the time. But the government and the RBI have taken the prompt policy measures, both in the short term and in the long term, in a calibrated manner to reinvigorate the economy at the earliest with going forward. In fact, the resilience of the Indian manufacturing is evident from the fact that within a period of 2 months, India has become the world's second largest manufacturer of the PPE, the protective equipment, starting from scratch. Also, the early green shoots of economic revival have also emerged in May and June with real activity indicators like electricity and fuel consumption, the inter and intrastate movement of goods, retail financial transactions witnessing a pickup. So, of course, many steps that have been taken after the COVID-19 pandemic to increase the economic activity across the country, making India self-reliant, Atmanirbhar Bharat. And let's now go across to our correspondent Ajay Mishra for more developments on that. Ajay, of course, we've been discussing, almost every day how many steps are being taken in different sectors in a special broadcast as well by the government to kickstart the economy once again. Of course, the entire world economy had seen a shake-up in view of the COVID-19 pandemic. But India, with its strong fundamentals, the economic fundamentals, of course, we are seeing the economy picking up and going forward in the right direction.
Absolutely. I think since this Unlock India Phase 1 has been launched since 1st of June, the strategy of the government and the RBI has been two-pronged. First, it has to go for the structural reforms that the economy has been crying for since very long. And secondly, we have to support those sections of society who actually need help in this point in time. So on one hand, we'll have to support the labor class, the agriculture, the poor and downtrodden with the direct cash and that kind of supply. On the other hand, we also have to go for the big structural reforms that the country has just announced, for example, in the field of agriculture and mining. So the Prime Minister also time and again reiterated that Indian economy will come on track very soon, and government is with the India Inc. So far as the Finance Ministry is concerned, it has today released some of the indicators that that clearly shows that there are some kind of green shoots in the month of June after this India Unlock Phase 1, and that's very encouraging. Whereas we see positivity from across the sectors, from agriculture to manufacturing to services. In the months ahead, we also expect that some of the services sector, for example, railways, are going to perform better than the month of May. Electricity consumption is going to go up from here because of the industrial units demand.
Right. Okay, Ajay. Sure.
From here. So we expect that the economy will have a recovery, and a quicker recovery and a smarter recovery in the days to come, Nancy.
All right, Ajay, well, that's all the time we have for in this bulletin. We are running short of time, but we'll of course be discussing more in our subsequent bulletins. Thanks very much, Ajay, for joining us and sharing all those inputs. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of the news. Thanks for being with us.